Do someone have a reading?
Call this meeting of the Buckinghamshire Milton Keynes Fire Authority to order. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to today's extraordinary Fire Authority meeting. Just for people, for members of the public, the meeting will be recorded and available on the YouTube channel in due course. If I could ask those that are on Teams, we've got a number of people on Teams today. If you could make sure your camera is off during the meeting. If you want to speak, if you just use your electronic hand, and we will spot you, and I'll invite you to speak. To kick us off, item number 1, apologies.
Councillors Bagg, Christensen, McLean and Waite.
Thank you. And I think we've got a couple of people that are just running a bit late. Secondly, delighted to welcome Councillor Jane Carr to her first Fire Authority meeting. Welcome. Looking forward to working with you. Councillor Carr has been appointed by Milton Keynes City Council following some changes of proportionality there. Moves us to item number 3, disclosure of interests. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests that members wish to declare? Set that as none. Thank you very much. Item number 4 is Chairman's announcements, which there are none. Moves us to item number 5, petitions. Have we received any petitions under Standing Order SOA 6?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Moves us to item number 6, questions. To receive questions in accordance with Standing Order SOA 7. Have we received that?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Moves us to item number 7, membership of the authority. Head over to Graham Britton.
Thank you, Chairman. As indicated, due to a change of proportionality at Milton Keynes City Council, for the record, the changes are as follows: a change from the following councillors: Darlington, Exon, Fuller, Khan and McLean, to Darlington, Exon, Fuller, Carr and McLean. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We're just being asked to note that. Moves us to item number 8, committee matters rather. Handing over to Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, as indicated, there's been a slight change in configuration of proportionality with, in essence, the Labour group and the Lib Dem group swapping in terms of a reduction of the Labour group from 4 to 3 seats and an increase from the Lib Dem group from 3 to 4 seats, Chairman.
Thank you. And do we have nominations, scrutiny nominations for Executive Committee and Overview and Audit Committee?
Thank you again, Chairman. No changes in respect of the Conservative nominations onto the Executive Committee. In respect of nominations from the Labour group, that's Councillor Darlington, and from the Lib Democrat group, that's Lambert and Christensen on the Executive Committee. And on the Overview and Audit Committee, again, no changes in respect of the Conservative nominations. For the Labour group, it will be on the Overview and Audit Committee, Councillors Fuller and Stutchbury, and Liberal Democrat Exon and Carr.
Thank you. Are we happy to approve those? Yeah. Thank you. Right, so that moves us to the substantive item, which is His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services Inspection Report 2023. Delighted to welcome His Majesty's Inspector Roy Wiltshire and Joy Hayden from HMI CFRS. This is obviously an important session for us. So I am, just for the record, going to add a little bit more latitude than normally in terms of time that members have to ask questions on the report. But if I do ask you to bring your remarks to close, if I could ask you to do so, just so I can make sure that we do still progress through the meeting in good time and order. I'm not going to say anything about the report. I'm just going to hand it straight over to Roy to introduce it. Over to you.
Thank you very much, the Chair. I'm really pleased to be here. For those, probably most of you don't know me, but I used to be Chief Artist in Hertfordshire for 13 years, a few years back until 2017. I became Chair of the National Fire Chiefs Council, and then one of His Majesty's, now was Her Majesty's inspectors. So I thought today I would go for a brief, and unusually for me, I have written this down to make sure I don't get anything wrong, and then we can open to questions afterwards. So, yeah. Okay, so summary of the report. Summary is that the fire service had made some improvement, but not done enough since the last inspection to improve. They have addressed 4 of the 22 areas for improvement and 3 of the 8 recommendations from causes of concern in the 21 report. Prevention and protection both need clear direction and prioritisation, targeting the highest risk. But although mobilising the nearest fire engine in Thames Valley is a good thing, Buckinghamshire is over-reliant on neighbouring fire services to attend incidents. And there's a need for better setting of direction and prioritisation from senior leaders, but also a concern for the workload levels within the service. This report, current report, has 26 areas for improvement and 3 causes of concern. We expect an action plan within 28 days of publication of the report to show how the causes concerns will be addressed. Starting from the base document, the Community Risk Management Plan. This does not cover all risks within Buckinghamshire and does not allocate resources in the way we would expect to prevention, protection and response in a proportionate manner. There has not until recently been sufficient community engagement in the CRMP, Community Risk Programme process, and although the service does gather local risk information well, so that's risk information for firefighters on stations. I'll take you through the first cause of concern, which is in prevention. To be fair, there has been some improvement, a revised strategy and some direction to the work, but the service is not identifying and prioritising people most at risk. They concentrate on the over 80s and high-rise residential. Although these are both risk factors, but there are others: health, deprivation, alcohol and drug abuse, etc. And the prevention work needs to be evaluated. The staff that work on prevention have the right skills and make appropriate referrals, e.g. falls to social services, and they work well with partners. Staff are also good at safeguarding matters. Cause of concern on protection, which is, as you know, fire safety in buildings. There is a need to review the strategy and risk-based inspection programme to ensure the highest risk premises are identified and audited. There are more staff in protection, which is a good thing, and they're well trained and they do carry out good quality audits within buildings, and their building consultations are also good. But the systems, the IT systems, etc., need upgrading, and more direction and prioritisation is required for the staff. Cause of concern on fairness and promoting diversity. The service hasn't made enough progress since our last inspection to improve equality, diversity, inclusion. Although the service has done some work, it's not been ignored, they just haven't done enough. The service has done enough to complete one of our recommendations by reviewing its equality impact assessment process, but the other recommendations still require action to be taken or completed, i.e. raising awareness, feedback systems from staff, collecting data and recruiting a diverse workforce. The service is good at tackling bullying and harassment and discrimination, but workloads often mean that deadlines for these cases are not met. In terms of response, there's no cause of concern, but the service is very lean and struggles to resource fire engine availability. 30% fire engine attendances to incidents are from other services, as I mentioned earlier. Risk information needs to be updated and available on the instant ground and the mobile data terminals. There are good plans for fire station locations. Officers know how to command incidents and the Thames Valley control works well. Buckinghamshire is well prepared to attend major and multi-agency incidents, although more needs to be done to complete all the Grenfell recommendations. The service has comprehensive financial plans, but falls short on allocating resources to prevention, protection and responses, I mentioned earlier, and on productivity. The general IT systems are poor and require more investment. Prevention and protection information systems have failed, and mobile data terminals cannot be removed from fire engine cabs to enable instant command. We would say there's limited capacity and capability within the service to bring about this change. They have struggled to recruit IT and project management specialists, which has had an impact on their ability to change. Senior managers need to be more visible and consistently demonstrate the right behaviours. 96% of staff who responded to our survey do know the service values, which is a good thing, and the staff are proud to work for the service. However, complaints go through the chain of command, and this can affect confidence from staff in reporting and the timescales that things are resolved. At the time of inspection, there wasn't an independent reporting line for complaints, but I think this might be in place now. Our inspectors witnesses middle managers who were not supportive of each other. We were told there was a lack of confidence in some of the senior leaders. The service has a good wellbeing provision, but it's not always accessed or implemented correctly. We were told of high workloads and pressures which linked to the capacity issues. There is a need to improve workforce planning And although there has been some improvement, there needs to be a fully open and fair promotion process. Services are good at background checks for employment, and as I say, staff have told us they are proud to work in the service. That concludes my summary. Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm going to open it up to questions from members. Councillor Stutchbury.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for the report and the manner that you presented it. Things that I think I drew out of the report were the elements around retained firefighters and the ability to hand those. I think that's something that we need to work on to recover that position. I also drew out the elements around staffing and the pressures on staff and that causes stress. And that can be from my personal opinion, it's mainly my personal opinion, can be caused through workload and how we do it. I was heartened by some of the good comments you made in the report. I also looked at the background of the economics of the fire authority, and those economics are still recovering from decisions in previous fire authorities and this one, where we chose to reduce precept in 2015. And that has had a lack of resources, which comes forward to today's position. I am pleased that there was a willingness shown within the response from the team in the fire service to respond to these things. The staff are the main purpose of firefighting. Without the staff, it doesn't function. And I do remain concerned that the inadequacies and the points you made around us side service, although we don't know what the other services are relying on us, so that's an arbitrary thing. But I'm sure the chief of the fire authority and the chairman of the fire authority are going to have to work carefully through this report to actually take those points on board.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the certainly on retained on-call firefighters, it's virtually a countrywide problem. Trying to get enough people to crew on-call, and it's probably something we will come to in our or the Chief Inspector State Fire report later. Is that something needs to be better? The society has changed. You know, the way people work has changed. People working from home, local has changed. So that's not just the Buckinghamshire, but there are one or two stations in Buckinghamshire where it's an acute problem. You know, the low single-figure percentage availability. Yeah, that makes it acute. I do agree with you. As I say, I was actually in Hertfordshire when some of those decisions were made in the past, and I think with the base budget and the capacity in the fire service, harks back to those times, probably years ago now, I should imagine. I think back all the things we've been through since then. Well, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, those decisions were made. And I do believe that is impacting you as a fire authority in service now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from members? Councillor Walsh.
Thanks, Chairman. Apologies, I was late. With regards to the finances that are mentioned in the report, I mean, I think it's great that the authority has provided additional resource to the service to improve headcount amongst things and estates improvements. But also, as an executive and lead member team with the lead of the chairman, we've obviously underdone a detailed financial review, which has also improved the financial situation of the medium-term forecast. And that's very positive, and we're pleased that we've been able to do that. But when we look at your concerns with over-the-border usage, I mean, because of the map of the county, as it were, and the former parts that used to be part of Buckinghamshire that are now, you know, separate authorities, it makes it quite challenging to basically resource those without, for instance, building a new station or having a full whole-time crew elsewhere at very significant cost. So in your perspective, where do you feel we should be in terms of over the border? Because obviously you think it's too high, but because of our geographical nature, we're always going to have some over the border. So what, from the inspectorate's position, is an acceptable over the border usage?
Yeah, I don't, we won't put a percentage on it. I won't say it's 5%, 10%, those sort of, because it does depend on the circumstances. And I think, I used to be in charge of Rickmansworth, just in the north, and they used to come into Buckinghamshire. So that to and fro, but it just seems that because of the crewing systems and the availability of some fire stations is a little over reliant on cross border. I said that mobilising nearest fire engine is a good thing, and mobilising nearest fire engine across borders is a good thing. That's where Thames Valley Control works well. But I think the balance just got a bit out of kilter, and that's about availability. Locations of fire stations are fine, and we wouldn't expect you to go and spend another X million pound building another whole time for it, which costs you £1.5 million to run every year. You don't expect that sort of thing. It just needs a thorough review with your colleagues north, south, east, and west of you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapel.
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry for the tickly cough. I hopefully caught it outside. Carrying on what Matt was saying about over the border help, I mean, it's been ever since the Act of 1947 that cross-boundary fire brigades would help each other. So where I'm coming from is, you say there's a 30% reliance on over the border authority. Equally so, Buckinghamshire will be going into the other authorities on an initial call where they've got an initial call of 2 or 3 pumps. One could well be Buckinghamshire. So is that 30% net, or by the time you take the occasions when Bucks goes into the other authorities, does that bring it down considerably?
I don't think we've done that calculation exactly, so I can give you a percentage, but certainly talking to the chiefs of North and South, the Buckinghamshire appliances, and Mick might have the figures for you as the chief officer, but they don't go into Oxfordshire and Hertfordshire as much as they come into Buckinghamshire, and they don't balance out in any way, really.
Anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, just on those, we're net receivers from some authorities because we're landlocked, obviously.
Yeah.
So we're bordered by a number of authorities, but it's seasonal as well. So with Oxfordshire, we're net providers in the winter time, but net receivers in the summertime. So it almost evens out with Oxfordshire. Northamptonshire similar, but we are net receivers from Royal Berkshire and from Hertfordshire as well. So it's almost that sort of southeast kind of area. And as Councillor Walsh mentioned, that bit around when Slough used to be part of Buckinghamshire,
Yeah.
and they redrew lines on the maps, and we've got that bit that goes in where Burnham is. It's almost like an island. So even if we had a whole time pump available 24/7 in that area, Slough would still beat us into that area. So there are some anomalies because of the shape of the areas and because our boundaries have been redefined. It is a difficult one, but I've got all of those figures and I can provide you with all the figures.
I mean, sorry, Chairman, that was going to be my next question. Is the 30% evenly distributed around the whole of the council? Buckinghamshire is long and thin, and even with Slough made it even longer and thinner. But I mean, that went in 74. Is there an area within the council that you see is weaker and relies on outside border activity coming in? Or is it universal all the way around? Because I think, taking up Matt's point, if it was one area, then that would need something like a station, which is much money. So I'm just trying to refine it a little bit to see where it is.
Well, again, I think Nick is the temporary chief officer to give you more detail on that. But my perception is certainly Slough and Rickmansworth will be the 2 areas that provide most of the borders of Buckinghamshire, just from my own history and experience. But I don't know whether that matches up.
Yeah, can I just make a point on the 30% as well? So you could read the report and interpret that as 30% of our incidents has the initial response from someone over the border. That isn't the case. That 30% includes, if we have, say, a 6-pump fire and there'll be 5 from Buckinghamshire and 1 from over the border, that is included in that. I just wanted to kind of make that point. And again, because of geography, So if you take Gerrards Cross Fire Station, if you turn left and you've got a 2-pump call, the second pump will always be London.
Yeah.
You know, just because of where the geography is, because it's right on the border. So, you know, there are areas that we know are specific areas, but we've been working with those services across border around, you know, charging arrangements and the not-for-not type arrangements that we've got in place. So we're very aware, and I can provide all of those figures historically as well, because this isn't new.
My last point is on the boundaries between Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire and London, you've got massive hospitals like Mount Vernon. I used to be stationed at Iceland, and half of our time we were talking to Rickmansworth at Mount Vernon on false calls. So are we talking about 30% of false calls, or are they actual fires we're talking about?
It was all incidents, so
incidents,
it
yeah.
will include false alarms, and false alarms are particularly high in Buckinghamshire. The percentage of false alarms is quite high.
Just on that, we are below the national average
Right.
on false alarms. Just so to correct that.
Councillor Donaldson.
I have a couple of points. So firstly, just to balance out that, I mean, obviously we've got rural and urban environment. Milton Keynes is a very urban environment. So I wanted to get us back to the point around protection and the new responsibilities that we have following Grenfell, particularly in high rises, which tend to be located, not exclusively, but tend to be located in Milton Keynes. So what do you think we can do to improve that? And obviously, you know, we've already had a discussion internally in Milton Keynes Council to do anything we can to share and help with that, because, you know, we know our area very, very well, and it's changing very, very rapidly. The second thing I wanted to pick up was, and Keith's not here, but he made a really good, oh, he is.
He's online.
Maybe you'll make the point about the financial difference per head in the two reports that came out. But, you know, he pulled that out because he's such a detailed guy and reads every single report. But we're just over £30 per head here. The other authority that you released on the same day was over £50 per head. So what, in your view, is that, you know, does that gap, what extra pressures do you think that gap causes us as an authority? And then lastly, one of your main conclusions is we didn't make enough progress from the last report, which I think you're speaking to the authority members here, so what do you expect from us going forward, supporting the senior management team? What's the best way for us to make sure we don't take our eye off the ball on that, or we're very focused? I'm not sure we took our eye off the ball on everything, but we clearly didn't make enough progress. So how can we be most helpful? And can you elaborate a bit on your point about senior leaders? Because it's are you saying it's an individual? Are you saying it's the us? We should have done more? Are you saying that it's people? I don't want to put you in too uncomfortable a position, but I'm aware of previous discussions you may have had with members of the authority, and I think it would be good to share that with the entire room. Thanks.
So I'll take those points. So protection, and I think I don't think I know, as I said, the actual staff in protection are well qualified. You have more staff, and when they do audit premises, they do it well. So, you know, it probably needs a bit of quality assurance evaluation, but that's done well. Where the issue has been is the actual risk-based inspection program. So deciding which buildings to go to first, and that could be high rise. Now, I know, having spoken to Mick, they're already talking to National Fire Chiefs Council, getting some help on reviewing the risk-based inspection program. So I don't think it will take much to amend that. And of course, with the new building safety regulator and the high-rise buildings, you're going to have to use your staff to support that process as well. So that all comes into that mix of where are the priorities, where do we focus our resources, where, but I'm sure that will come soon. Linked to that is also the Grenfell recommendations. So things like multiple stay put advice, those sorts of things, multiple rescue advice. Having an electronic system for doing that. Already said the IT systems need a bit of investment, so making sure that on top of those areas. But in terms of fire authority finance, I think it's clear. Well, you know, £50 is particularly high. Is that Merseyside?
Merseyside.
Merseyside, yeah. They're Merseyside, and often the urban fire authorities like Merseyside will be more ahead just as the population and those sort of things. But if you look at the England average, you're also about £5 below that, I think, I remember. So yeah, you are a very lean fire service and fire authority, and that does cause capacity issues. So I think, but your financial plans as they sit, very good. It's just you haven't got much money. So yeah, so that's a bit of an issue. In terms of supporting the leaders as you go forward, you may have done this already, but however you do your scrutiny, probably, I don't know whether it's fire through committee or fire authorities, doing scrutiny of the areas for improvement and the recommendations of causes of concern. The committee will come up with an action plan that you should be scrutinising and supporting that action plan and the areas and that's whatever your systems are, your governance processes. I won't dictate those. You should be getting a report about how those areas for improvement and recommendations are being dealt with. That's what I would suggest. And in terms of senior leaders, no, not pointing a finger at any particular senior leader, but one of the things that we were told is, sometimes a lack of visibility, and senior leader can be sort of group manager up, really. We look at it that way in this sort of organisation. And the visibility, how they take feedback, and sometimes we did witnesses how those senior leaders support and interact with each other as well. So I think there's a bit of team building and a bit of visibility would certainly assist.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert.
Thank you. I've got quite a few things. I'm not going to go all the way through them. So what I would really like to see is then the plan that comes forward from the management team, that we can, as our role befits, that we should utilise that plan and understand it. And so building on the past few reports, and your predecessor was with us last year, and was explaining his rationale at the time for that report. There is still a common thing amongst all the three reports that we've had, which is, and you just said yourself, you just don't have enough money. And precept flexibility has given us that, but there is a long tail to putting all that support and structure, physical personnel and equipment in place to meet that once you get the money. So we've only just really, this is year 2 of precept flexibility. I'm not going to put words in your mouth that say we should still have that flexibility, but it feels the way you read this report, it's a good service. It needs more money to do the things it needs to do to bring it up to what you now define as this inspections baseline, because they change every time depending on the themes that you're looking at. So a couple of things that come to my mind is when you're looking at, as you point out in here, we attend all automatic fire alarms. Is your recommendation that we don't? And if that's the case, then that's an operational change for us. It does change the cost profile, and that's fed in the report as well as where availability of pumps is therefore used, to attend these alarms. So that's kind of the first question that I'd like to understand that. You mentioned productivity in the report, and you mentioned it yourself now. I work for an organisation called the Productivity Group. Productivity is a multi-lever, multi-year, multiple strand kind of challenge, but you don't define what that productivity challenge is. If it's possible for you to illuminate further what that productivity is, I would be grateful, and I would like that then reflected in our response back to you and our operational oversight afterwards, because it can be many things. Once you understand what productivity actually is per organisation, you can then measure its cost to deliver. Therefore, that changes your profile. The people risk that you mentioned here, the 80s and above, we chose that on purpose. It was a deliberate factor that we were addressing. But the report then says, we now need to consider 65 plus. I fear the next time we'll say, well, make it 45, and the goalpost is changing. With response to those, we do follow up and we do manage that particular age group quite well. we appear to be marked down for not including the group that we purposely have not included. So I'm confused about why that's such a point of concern. Having held the people portfolio for a number of years, we went from, when I first started this organisation under 2 previous chiefs ago, we went from 5 men to 5 fighters, and being able to bring your whole self to work every day and to champion that. And an EDI work is extraordinary. The plan is extraordinary, huge. And I've looked at other services, including Cheshire, who were leading the way for a while on that. And I still find that we've always got somewhere to go, we always do, but we are actually in a good place for that. So reading 39 to 46 in terms of the high level report, it's almost not recognised that work is going on and people can bring themselves, hold themselves at work. You can mention characteristics and be able to say who they are. Well, I don't yet know of a way to force our employees to tell us their gender, their protected characteristics, unless you're going to say it's mandatory, going against what legislation says. How are we to do that? Because that appears to be the gap in the report. We don't know what we don't know and can't fix it because we can't force them to tell us to fix that bit. I've got more questions, but I'm just going to leave it there for now because I'm going to go back to something else.
Okay.
Sorry, HR Wilshire.
Roy, by the way.
Thanks, Roy. Thank you.
Okay, the first point about changing the themes, actually, our themes methodology is slightly tweaked, but we deliberately inspected the same things that we've inspected the last 2 years to see what was, so we've not moved goalposts or changed themes. We're doing the same thing. AFAs, attendance of AFAs, I have a personal view, but as an inspector's view, that's the decision for the fire authority and fire service based on the professional advice. So I'm not going to say whether you should or shouldn't attend different AFAs, because that is your gift, not mine. Productivity. So what we mean by productivity is, are you getting the best out of the workforce as they come to work? So we've already talked about prevention and protection and their prioritisation and direction and what they should be doing. So they're working fairly well, but it's often it's very much focused on fire stations as well. What are they doing as much as they could be doing in the time that they're at fire station? And that means all the time they're at fire station. Are they doing community fire safety? Are they doing safe and well? Are they training as much as they should be? We know you can measure that bit when they go to emergency attendance, but all the other things that a fire station staff should be doing, are they doing that as much as they should? And in our view, probably not in Buckinghamshire. There's more they could be doing. So obviously fire safety doesn't make widgets, so it's not that easy to measure. But are these people at work doing everything you'd expect from them? But I wrote 80s down here, and I thought, well, why am I talking about the 80s? Yeah, it was the over 80s.
Wellness.
Yeah, so over 80s, it absolutely age is a risk factor, but it's concentrating on over 80s and high-rise residential will mean that you are missing some other risk factors. So we're not asking you to go and look at every over 65-year-old in the county, but I always used to say as a chief, I could predict the next fire day from Hertfordshire would be someone 65 living alone, drinking and smoking. The profile was there. You just need to find them and do the safety stuff you need to do with them. So I just think it's a matter of, the staff know what they're doing in safe and well checks. The staff are motivated. It's just that widening the risk base to make sure you get to the most vulnerable in those areas rather than the 1 or 2 criteria. In terms of EDI, there's plans and commitment, and there's commitment from senior leadership. But what we're saying is it's not always hitting the front line. So our reality testing, our focus groups, talking to people on the front line, what fantastic plans, fantastic leadership, strategic intent, it's not getting through how it should do in some areas in the service, and that's the bit we're concerned about, really.
Okay.
And you're right, we can't force anyone to give their
No,
characteristics, and I don't think there's any government going to legislate to that.
no, in fact, they've changed the legislation to make sure we can't.
Yeah.
So, okay. Chairman, may I
Yeah,
ask
if you want to follow
some
up.
questions? So, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. When reading the report, the prettiest thing they've read, I have to admit. But there was a lot of things in here that for which we can learn, and I'm grateful for that. I'm looking forward to the operational response, as I said, and for us to do our oversight of that. Part of the report covers finances, and we've covered that, but actually the people part of it and our leaders. Now, you're not immune to recent conversations about what has gone on in terms of this report. I'm concerned that some of the activity around that may have a detrimental effect on our ability to see through some of that, some of this response operationally. And that concerns me because I fear that it has therefore impacted, and this is noted in the reports about succession planning and concerns about the succession plan. That succession plan has been in place since the last report and was fairly robust. But I think this report and its lead up to that, and in particular, the phone calls and actions by HMI Parr, your predecessor, I think have, in my mind, raised an unnecessary level of suspicion of all it is, it seems, and confidence that this report didn't have an ulterior motive. I'm not saying that is what is the case, I'm saying this is what's going through my mind. And I think subsequent actions in this authority are putting at risk our operational delivery of responding to this plan, knowing that it is what it needs to be. So I'm going to ask you to comment about why HMI Parr did what he did and to recognise the impact that is having on our leadership and our operations side of our organisation.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on what HMI Parr did and the subsequent matters. I do know, I recognise there's been an impact. I've tried to work with both Councillor Rouse and Mick Osborne to ensure that we get an appropriate response through the plans that come through. And one of the things we try to do as an inspectorate now, that's very much part of our DNA, is to help improvement rather than just inspect. So what I have been trying to do is help that next step and that improvement, and I will continue to do that.
I'm just going to ask Mick if he wants to comment on the operational readiness assertion that Councillor Lambert made.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. No, just to give members assurance around the operational matters, that as I briefed on, I think it was last Thursday morning, we do have good plans in place already. We've been working with the HMI since the hot debrief back in end of June, and with the National Fire Chiefs Council as well, to make sure that all of the plans that we're bringing forward are best in class, best practice, and have been peer reviewed across the board. So we are working closely with all of our partners and colleagues, and internally, as I say, our plans are being developed as we speak now. We've been working on them for some time now, and within, I think it's the 15th of November is 28 days deadline, we will have strong, robust operational plans in place for those areas, just to give members that assurance.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Roy, you mentioned obviously concerns regarding availability, and in the report you highlighted 4 individual fire stations that have got acute problems. You suggested that we do a review of our operations. Are you suggesting that we ask our officers to go away and think the unthinkable, perhaps look at our fire station base and rationalising that, close some stations potentially and reallocate resources elsewhere within the authority area?
I think that's certainly under integrated community risk management plans. That's something you would do anyway. I know we commented that many of your locations are good locations, the fire stations, where they're needed. But I think that if you're only getting 5% availability at the fire station, it must raise a question whether that fire station is required or not. It must raise a question for the entities beyond that. But that, again, is for your professional advisors for the fire authority to make those decisions.
I'm going to push the time. You've had,
I'd like to ask another question.
yeah, no, but you've had your go, so I'm just going to ask some.
You've taken
Councillor
everything on
Stutchbury,
board
Councillor Stutchbury, I'm talking. So I'm going to ask some questions first, and then when I've asked my questions, I will do a final wrap round of members. But let me ask my. You've done your first round, so let me just do my questions.
Oh,
all right. So, just a few things, if I may, from me. So, at the heart of the report, when you sort of try and distill it to, I think, some of the root causes, there are three things: the financial plan and situation of the service, the public safety plan 2020 to 25, and leadership. There are sort of three root causes driving some of it. I just want to dive a bit more into some of them. So one of the things that is striking about the financial plan, so we can't relitigate what went on 10, 15 years ago, partly because a number of us weren't here. Because a number of us weren't here, but in terms of where the authority now sits, and I think this is recognised in the report, we've clearly strengthened the reserves position, strengthened the operational resources position, and hopefully set a platform for transformation. And I suppose the bit that would just be helpful to understand a bit more of your perspective on is the challenge for us now is to make sure that any investment in transformation has the impact that we want it to have, and not just throw money at resources for the sake of throwing money at resources. And you make two observations in the report I just want to point to. One is that this service hasn't properly looked at the allocation of resources between prevention, response and protection. And it's good just to unpick that a little bit more about what you mean by that. And then I think that the salient lesson for us in the report is that protection, you identify, has been well resourced for a while, but that resource hasn't been well directed. And I suppose what's the kind of key lesson we should take from that? On the public safety plan, again, one of the challenges for us, I think, and for the services, we can't unpick the 2020 to 25 public safety plan, but I think we recognised that it needed to change, and that's why we brought forward the community risk management planning process, and there's been good progress on that. I suppose my question therefore is there anything else you think we should have done or could have done to affect the drivers that public safety plan, your assessment of it hasn't really understood the risks, that we're not delivering against some of the commitments in the public safety plan? Is there anything we could have done differently? And is there anything between now and the publication of our community risk management plan you would encourage us to do that would take away some of those concerns? Because that feels to me like a slightly fixed point that's difficult for us to work through. And I think I think partly because the headline is about cross-border, and I think we need to recognise, and I certainly recognise, we have become more reliant on over the border over the last 12 months. Some of that is about whole-time resources, and hopefully we're starting to see a sort of change from that. But I think the root cause of this is about availability. And again, what would be helpful is any best practice. You've made the point about retained firefighters being a national problem, but is there any best practice that you would point to from your inspections elsewhere that we could really get to in similar largely rural areas that would help with our availability challenge? And then just moving on to sort of, I guess, the leadership points. You refer to a fully open recruitment process, and if I'm honest, I didn't quite take from or understand from the report what the issues were around that. So it'd be good just to explain a little bit more about that. And you've slightly touched on the ED&I point. My question on ED&I is that feels to me like that is a never-ending journey, and it's the point at which you would feel that we've got to a stage, and is it just about staff playing back that they feel that they're feeling that on the front line? Is that simply the proof point we've got to move to? And it leads me to sort of final 2 points. One of my observations just around engagement going forward, and to put on record, I have welcomed the conversations that we've had around the improvement from this. I think if I would make one observation, it's we had a visit at the beginning of the year for 2 causes for concern. And I think I certainly left from those causes for concern feedback with a sense that good progress was being made. And I'm not sure, if I'm honest, that I felt that the tenor of that feedback was going to lead us to the place in this report where we hadn't made quite the progress that we had. And so therefore, one of my questions would be, moving forward, how can we make sure that we're getting the right tone of feedback from you that suggests we are or aren't making enough progress as we go through the course? Because none of us want to be in this place again. And then finally, obviously we will read this report in isolation about our own service because we understand our own service well. We saw Merseyside's published the same day, and I obviously get the reports every time they're published and looked at some of them. But I suppose what would be helpful for me, and I think some of the authorities, just to help place our service against peers. Where does this report put us versus our peer group? You know, how concerned should we be about the report?
I'll try, make sure I try to remember. If I ever remember one of the questions, please let me know. But so I'm way through. The finance. You're right. You can't, because it's as you know as well. It's not better than I. This the base budget issue. So if you haven't got something in your base budget from years ago, building up to meet that is very difficult. The plans you have for the finances you have are good, and the reserves are building. And I suspect, over the coming years, as you invest more, whether it's through precept or any other way, you'll start to reap that. One of the issues you do suffer from, and I know because I live in Barnet, North London, just before the Hertfordshire, is your location in the country. So the job market and the pressures on how much you can pay as a local public sector against, you know, the IT specialists and the project management specialists in the South East and Buckinghamshire is difficult. It's difficult to recruit. We have a very similar problem because I inspect policing as well, with police control rooms and getting enough people in compared to money that other call centres and things pay. So it's a really a huge South East problem. So dealing with that, I think, will be difficult. And sometimes we've done it ourselves. You need to. So with our analysts and IT specialists in HICFRS, we're very much using new graduates because they come out with the skills and we know they can stay with us for 2 or 3 years and then move on to earn more money. So it's just a different way of looking at things sometimes when we're in this part of the country. Resource allocation, which really sits back into the public safety plan, the CRMP, is when you decide, when you've really done your risk picture and you decide how you're going to deal with that risk. And prevention is always better than the cure. Protection needed in building safety. Response is a last resort, although very important, is where you then allocate those resources. And fortunately now, probably not, and it wasn't around when your public safety plans, there is a standard for CRMPs now. There's a standard from the final standards board that say all the things you should be looking at the National Risk Register, you should be looking at the Community Risk Register, you look at your floodplains, you look at your demographics. There's a whole list of things. And there are some, West Midlands, Kent, those sort of Kent I would suggest, because it's a bit more rural, is a good one to look at. And so there are things to look at there, but so there's a standard, and there are some people that do risk management particularly well, and I would point at Kent more than anything at the moment. There's a rural availability. Again, I would look at Kent. They've done some different things there, but that is a challenge in a home county like Buckinghamshire. And particularly in other areas, Hereford and Worcester do that as well, but most fire services are struggling with on-call retained availability. And I think we've been talking about a national project for a while now. Even before I became inspector, it's something that needs to be done. And it's something we're going to push government on. I mean, it needs to be something that really looks at whether the on-call system is sustainable for the future, or whether something else needs to be done. There's open promotion. I think some of the open promotion and their progress has been made in this, but people within the organisation need to perceive that as well as it being. So you've done succession planning, and some of the perception is not as open as it should be. And people's perception is their reality. So even if it's not real, if that's what they perceive, so attempts should be made in communications and how you do things. To ensure that people understand and perceive it to be open as well as it being open. EDI, it's never ending, EDI. And as the councillor talks about, it's diversity in all its forms, being your true self when you come to work, and not having to conform because you feel like you have to conform, because the local culture is what it is. Perhaps on a watch or somewhere. It's all those, and the fire service everywhere has a long way to go on that. It's you might have read my values and culture report from earlier in the year. There's it's not every fire station, it's not every watch, and it's not every service, but there are too many pockets of that at the moment. So people being able to be their true self at work. So the feedback on the causes of concern, rather than look back, I can guarantee you the feedback you get back from the causes of concern while I and your HMI will tell you exactly where you are and how you're improving or not improving, and will make suggestions to help that improvement, not just leave it as it is. And what was the last? All right.
Peer.
Peer, yeah. Peer competition. It's very. We try not to do league tables and those sorts of things, but it's not a good report. And I'm sure you will. There will be improvement, and you can improve. I think the commitment's there, the proudness in the services there, with the help of the fire authority scrutinising the work of the senior management team. I have no doubt you can improve.
Great, thank you. Just before I've got Councillor Carr, so I'll come to Councillor Carr in a second. Just before I do that, just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, I'm going to exercise. I am exercising a degree more latitude over the normal standing order about only speaking once on an item and only for 4 minutes. What I would just say, two things. One is, can I just gently counsel members that we are in public session, and so just take a degree of care over some of the points that are being made. And secondly, can I encourage members when they're asking questions to make sure we're not repeating questions on topics or things that we've already covered, just for the interests of time. So I've got so I'm going to take Councillor Carr for the first time. Then there's a final check of members, and I'll open up for second round, so to speak. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. I do apologise if I am going back over old ground, but in relation to Area 6 and the need for recruitment and working with various teams, can I just ask, that 30%, is that at all linked to any specialised service or any specialised unit? Having sort of been involved in several critical incidents recently, I was very surprised to see that there were units from other counties that had got specialist services, and I wondered if that contributed to that in any way. The next bit was in terms of the sort of climate management and how we're going to predict and manage that in terms of financial support. And I wondered if there was best practice that we could look at that would assist us, particularly in terms of heat difficulties and flooding, particularly for Milton Keynes, where we actually have stations positioned in the middle of a floodplain. So we are very keen to see how we're going to manage that. And my final point would be is if we don't address these points within this report, and I think the report is extremely helpful, what is the outcome for us? You know, where do we go from here? Because, you know, if we haven't solved this, we've surely got a rather large problem. Thank you.
Well, if I can understand your first question, was it about specialty rescue units and urban?
Yeah, specialist teams. Having sort of had some involvement in Salisbury and then something recently in Newport Pagnell, I'm sort of a little bit more au fait about how we're bringing specialist teams to deal with stuff. And of course, a service as big as this would have some teams, but if they're in the north of the county when they need to be in the south or vice versa, we're going to have to use cross-county resources. Does that implicate on the 30%? And is there any way we can assist with that by looking at that in collectively?
The 30% is very much your day-to-day emergencies rather than
standard units.
Yeah, so
and I should use the word standard, but
yeah, the specialist resource, the national resilience resource, it's all built on the national coordination and advisory framework where people you expect people to come and help. Because you've probably got one HPP or the thought.
We've got you, Sarah.
Yeah. So you would need other units if you've got wide area flooding in Milton Keynes. You'd need high volume pumps from around the country town. So yeah, that's expected. So this is very much about day-to-day incidents.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful.
Okay. A report where else? And we're hoping it doesn't. Things will start to improve. And we will assist with that. We would expect the National Fire Chiefs Council, the Local Government Association, Home Office to help in that improvement as well. There are. I suppose ultimately, and this will never happen, I don't think, the Home Secretary can put in a team of people to run the service. But I don't think that we'll ever get there ultimately. You're asking where the real bottom line is, that's where it is. But our job is to make sure that doesn't happen as well as your job.
We'll have revisits, won't we?
Yeah, yeah, we will revisit, we'll come back for inspection, Catherine's and on the line as the service liaison lead will keep constant. I will talk to the chief officer pretty regularly. I do have chief constables and chief officers anyway, but especially with Buckinghamshire, I'll talk pretty regularly, so we won't take our eye off the ball.
Thank you.
Just for open up to, so any members haven't spoken and want to raise any questions? No, Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to bring up the section on promoting right values and improvement, because I think that pretty much covers quite a lot of where we need to go. You also mentioned governance and scrutiny, and it might be worth us looking at what other authorities do in governance and scrutiny. There are policies of questioning and ability to question and ability to scrutiny are robust enough to ensure that good scrutiny takes place. But the report on 36, some things that I am quite concerned about because of my background is the comments around occupational health, comments around physical, mental health, and additional welfare for staff. These are very important because if staff are not, if we are in our scrutiny processes unable to actually address those questions and approach those in a sympathetic and productive way, we fail. And that's as the elected members fail. And I feel that though I've seen lots of reports and read lots of reports, I read a report where it's saying that we failed it. So where would you recommend, though you haven't said it about our governance and scrutiny, to ensure that we actually do improve? Because it can only be improved by decisions taken, reports being reviewed, and recognising the work of officers who put good reports before us and not deviating from that. Because we shouldn't be having those situations in 2023 where we're looking at those staff issues and wellbeing issues, because that does affect our ability to recruit, and that does affect our ability to retain, and it does affect the welfare and longevity of people staying in post. So those are really key issues, and it's about the welfare issues. And without officers and without firefighters, we haven't got a service, so they are really key.
So there's two things. I think we found that there's pretty good welfare provision. So the system in there, but it's people accessing the system, understanding the system, having the time to go and do the things they need to be. And we were talking about a lot of workload pressures. People are working. We often call it in the inspectorate working hot. A lot of people are working hot. They're really going all the time. So it's taking that little bit of time to access some of that provision, to take the time out. In terms of the scrutiny, we don't, and we have no remit for inspecting fire authorities. So how you do scrutiny, how you do act, it's very important. Good governance, as you know, is very important. I would suggest discussion with the LGA, because they do a lot of peer assessment on, authorities and how these things work. So through the Fire Service Management Committee or the LGA itself, I'm sure it's not comfortable reading for yourselves or the operation people this report, but we are all in this now to help that improvement. So and I'll be talking to Nick and the team. Joe and Catherine will be heavily involved. We will come back for a revisit and look forward to seeing the plans for improvement.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving to the recommendations of the report then. So we are being asked to, that the authority note the BFRS HMI CFRS 2023 inspection report, Appendix 1. Secondly, that the interim CFO be delegated to prepare and publish an action plan on behalf of the authority in consultation with the chairman and the vice chairman. And thirdly, that the overview and audit committee be delegated the monitoring of progress and delivery against the action plan. Members happy to approve those recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. That moves us to date of next meeting. So can I, sorry, before I move to that, can I just thank both Roy Wiltshire and Jay Hayden for that. We've had a good hour discussion on the report, and obviously look forward to working with you as we address the report and going forward. So the date of next meeting is that the Fire Authority will be held on Wednesday, the 6th of December 2023 at 11 AM. Can I just confirm the location for that? Oh, okay, we'll confirm the location. On that note, with no further business, I close the meeting. Thank you. Yeah.